Welcome back as we continue reading Santa Ana, the people, the Pueblo, and the history of Tamaya. We finished chapter 1, and now we are going to be reading chapter 2. Hanu meets Castara. As winter drew to a close along the northern valley of the Rio Grande, the people began to think of the year to come. Soon, perhaps within only a month, and certainly in no more than 2, the rivers would thaw and the snows would begin to melt. Then it would be time for the people to move to the fields, time for the farmers to tend and guard the crops. If all went well, it would be a good year. No frost would destroy the tender seedlings. The rains would come to keep the young plants from withering in dry fields. No enemy would sweep down to carry off the harvest. And at the end of summer, the storerooms would be filled with maize, beans, and squash, enough to keep the people through the next winter, and, if need be, the following one as well. 1,000 miles to the south, in the cities and frontier outposts of the land that they had conquered and called New Spain, another group of people also dreamed of the year to come, the year that would be known as 1540 according to their calendar. They too had hopes for a good year, but their dreams were not of gentle rains that would nourish young seedlings, or of a plentiful harvest of maize to feed their families in the winter to come. Instead, their heads were filled with thoughts of a very different kind of riches. To the north, it was said, the earth held a treasure of gold, silver, and precious stones. Only the year before, one of them had traveled to these lands, and everywhere he went, Indians had told him of the rich kingdoms that lay beyond their villages. He had heard of one kingdom, the 7 cities of Cibola, so rich that the doors of its houses were said to be studded with turquoise. Indeed, the report said that he himself had gone far enough to look down upon the first city of this kingdom, and had seen that what the Indians told him were true. It was also true that the residents of Cibola had not welcomed him, and that he and his party had been forced to turn back with much more fear than food. That fact, however, was not enough to deter those who believed that the Cibola they might find treasure enough to make them wealthy for the rest of their days, like those of their countrymen who had won both wealth and fame by laying claim to rich lands in the south. As the rumor spread throughout New Spain, many who heard the tales of vast wealth felt that a man would be foolish not to risk his possessions, and even his life to win such fortune. By January 1540, when Francisco Vázquez de Coronado was chosen to lead an expedition north to the fabled kingdoms, there was no shortage of men willing to volunteer to accompany him. When the muster roll for the expedition was completed, at Compostela, a month later, it listed more than 200 men with horses and 62 who were willing to undertake the journey on foot. 2 months later, as the expedition prepared to leave the frontier post, at Culisan, their number had grown to more than 300 Spaniards and as many as 1,000 Indian allies. To mount this huge force, to carry its supplies, and to provide meat on the journey, the Spaniards had assembled a herd of more than 1,000 horses, mules, and cattle. Fray Marcos de Niza, a man who claimed to have seen the first of the 7 cities of Cibola, would guide the expedition, and a number of friars would accompany them. For the land to the north promised heavenly treasures as well as earthly ones. As Christians, the Spaniards believed that they would be blessed with eternal rewards for bringing the word of their God to those who had not yet heard it. People such as the residents of these fabled kingdoms, who as yet knew nothing of the religion of Spain and Christian Europe. In late April, as the snows melted along the Rio Grande, the Pueblo farmers began to tend their crops. Coronado's expedition left Culisan. Most of this vast army, encumbered with the baggage and supplies, would move slowly north, led by Tristan de Areño. Coronado himself would lead an advanced party, taking only enough cattle and provisions for 80 days, so that they could move quickly. With him would go 75 mounted men, 25 foot soldiers, the friars, and some of the Indian allies. As the Spaniards moved north, following Indian trails through the land that would come to be known as Arizona, Pueblo farmers tended their fields in the valleys along the Rio Grande. Corn grew and ripened. Blossoms appeared on the bean bushes, and squash and pumpkin vines spread over the fields. Here and there, in patches blessed with enough water, cotton began to flower. Women gathered herbs to dry and store for winter. While the men tended the fields, women mixed mortar from charcoal and mud to make plaster for the new rooms that were needed in the pueblos. When the women had finished building and plastering the walls, the men cut roof beams and erected them in the new rooms. The hopes of the winter seemed likely to be fulfilled. It was a good year, and there would be a rich harvest in the multi-storied pueblos. In July, however, before harvest could be gathered, before the wild piñon nuts had ripened, Coronado approached the first of the fabled cities of Cibola. This was Huaycu, a pueblo of the Zuni people. Word of his approach had preceded him, and it was not welcome news to the people of Huaycu, who had encountered the Marcos de Niza expedition the previous year. One member of that party, Esteban or Estebancio, had made such outrageous demands that the Zuni had put him to death, and the rest of the party had to then fled from the region. Hearing that the Spaniards had returned, the people of Zuni prepared to defend themselves. But on July 7th, Coronado's men took Huaycu by storm. There, in the town that they believed was the first of the 7 cities of Cibola, the hungry Spaniards found something that, at least temporarily, they prized more than gold or silver, namely, much maize, beans, and chickens, turkeys, larger than those of New Spain. The salt better and whiter than one member of the expedition had ever seen. When that treasure had satisfied their immediate hunger, however, their appetite for mineral riches returned. With it came rage at Fray Marcos, who had led them to this place with tales that could only have been lies about what he had seen, or pure invention about what he had not. This village of stone and adobe was no empire, no treasure house. Its people possessed no gold or silver or jewels. Instead of treasures, Friar Marcos had described, the residence, a haiku, had only some cotton cloth and a few pieces of turquoise and mas. We're going to pause here and we'll complete the rest of the reading later on. Thank you for being here.